we have a special guest today, and we're going to get right to it because right now the amount of people completely disenfranchised with our two-party duopoly, because it's really one party and it's the money party, continues to grow every day. There's an entire new generation of people kind of looking around going, what the hell is the answer here? I don't want to pick between an alleged rapist and an alleged rapist. Where do I go? And this guy has been seeking an answer. We're going to welcome Nick Brana. Nick Brana is part of the Movement for a People's Party. He is the founder of Movement for a People's Party. Nick, good to see you, buddy.
Hey, Ron, it's so great to be with you.
Yeah, man. So we'll give people a little bit of a background. You were working for Bernie in 2016, and you saw how everything went down, and you decided, you know what, we can't do this in the Democratic Party anymore. And by this, I mean instill any type of progressive change, instill any type of meaningful change. These are just two status quo parties, and the Democratic Party in particular. They really are the Washington Generals of politics. They're set up to lose. It's by design. And whether they win or not, it doesn't really matter because their donor gravy train keeps rolling because both parties have the same owners, that being Wall Street. You really saw this and it became apparent. And I think for a lot of us, 2016 confirmed all of our greatest suspicions. Like, that's why when they talk about like, oh, party unity and this and that, I'm like, look, as an individual, as long as I've been paying attention to politics, I never felt like, oh, Democratic Party, rah, rah. I felt like, well, these guys are a little bit better than those other guys. And I think they at least want to extend an olive branch to people like me. I'm pretty sure there's a couple people bucking the trend. You know, I lived in Seattle, so I was lucky enough. Jim McDermott was my congressman. He was one of the few progressives out there. And then you found out in 2016, oh, wait a second. They hate people like me even more than the right. They want any left-leaning people as far away from them as possible. They hate us the most. That was made abundantly true to us, and it's still the case now. And so you decided to take some initiative to start seeking a solution. And in 2017, we all showed up in Washington, D.C. for the Convergence Conference to try to convince Bernie to start a new party. He said no. He did not accept our offer. But I mean, dude, I love that event so much. And I've talked about it on this show so many times because what you saw at that event, I mean, yes, we didn't get a yes from Bernie Sanders, which was the big goal. We want Bernie to say, yes, I'm starting a new party. You know, he didn't say yes. And, but what we did have was we had a conference that was a pretty good time, but more importantly was, I mean, there were Greens there. There were DSA members there. There were environmental activists there. There were content creators there. There were journalists there. There were scientists there. There were politicians there. There were academics there. There were public intellectuals there. And everybody was having very deliberate, strategic conversations about what do we do about this. Members of the SA were there, you know, and you kind of saw that and you're like, okay, let's just break it down, brass tacks here. Lefty people, progressives, whatever you want to call it, whatever umbrella you want to throw it all under, our numbers are not huge. That's just the reality of the situation. And I think it's because a lot of people just aren't aware of what those terms actually mean, of what those policies would actually do in people's lives. So, you know, we got a lot of work to do as far as messaging goes, but if we all kind of work together, we're an influential faction because, well, our numbers are small. If we all have like a somewhat singular focus and are all in this together, we can actually do something.
It was an amazing conference and it was great to have you there, Ron. You and Jimmy and Steph did a show and it was fantastic. And the way that it brought together people, you know, who are on the left was beautiful too, you know, and that's like the kind of thing that we need to see. I do kind of have a different take from you, though, Ron, about being the majority. I think we are the majority.
Okay.
And I define that by looking at the issues. Like when you look at the issues that progressives say that they stand for, you know, or progressive populists, It's like Medicare for all, free public college, breaking up the banks, reducing inequality, getting money out of politics. Those things are overwhelmingly favorable. It's like 2 to 3 Americans, support like each of those or more. When you get to things like getting money out of politics, it's like, it's like almost unanimous. It's like 93%. So I think what divides people, like, to kind of talk about strategy, what divides people is the labels, because people have been trained so long to like just, identify with one label or the other, like socialist, even progressive, like, okay, that's not me. I've been, trained to hate those people by the media and my political like tribe, but when you connect with people on the issues, like Bernie was so well at doing, like he did it like, like I think one of the moments when it first hit me how successful Bernie was going to be in 2015, when I joined that campaign, was when he spoke at Liberty University.
Okay.
It was like, it was a conservative college in Southern Virginia. I'm here in Virginia too, but I'm kind of I'm outside of DC, which is politically very different. And, he had people there like very supportive and understanding and cheering. And it's like he could communicate, and we've all seen those like Fox, town halls that they did where the Fox selected audience was cheering for Medicare for all.
Right. Oh,
And
yeah,
so,
no, totally.
I think, the coalition is there. We got to put it together.
We got to put it together. I mean, yeah, I do agree with that. My thing is, though, again, it does come down to a lot of just the messaging. I think a lot of people, again, a lot of people are just straight up for Medicare for all now. The majority of people are actually for Medicare for all. But a lot of the ones that are hesitant, they're hesitant because of all the misinformation that is out there, because they've heard the message so many times. It'll cost too much. We can't afford it. That they actually believe it. Meanwhile, the system we have now actually costs a lot more than Medicare for all, and no one's excluded under Medicare for all. But so you kind of have a lot of that stuff to combat. So let's talk specifically about movement. So why can't we have the Democratic Party anymore? What's wrong with the Democratic Party? I mean, pretend you're answering a general person, not me, but
Yeah, of course. Gosh, for the last 50 years, Ron, we've been stuck in a cycle where the Democratic and the Republican parties that pretend to be two parties, but they're really one Wall Street party. They're two subsidiaries of the same parent corporation. They have had this pattern of deception against working people. That is, the Republicans will come, neither one of them serves working people. They're both completely owned by corporate money and the corporate donors, and even have corporate lobbyists, like 100 of them, for example, on the DNC. And so they are not political parties, so to speak. You can't even see them that way. They're committees of corporations. Each corporation sends their lobbyists and and then the lobbyists deliberate and they make decisions. And the rest of us are like, that doesn't serve us. And it's like, well, of course not. It's the fucking corporations making the decisions. But for the past 50 years, the Republicans have come in. They've lurched us further to the corporate right. But then what people are realizing now, I think in numbers larger than in generations, is that the Democrats come in, and rather than reversing that and taking us back to the left and kind of like expanding Social Security, re-regulating the banks, shoring up the New Deal, undoing everything the Republicans might have done in lowering taxes and starting new wars, they doubled down on that and they institutionalized everything that the Republicans did. And so you saw it in the way that it took Bill Clinton to pass NAFTA, in the way that it took Bill Clinton to repeal the New Deal, basically, financial protections, dismantle the social safety net, the way that it took Obama to basically make the Bush tax cuts permanent, to pass TPP, to institutionalize mass surveillance, to blow up the wars to a higher degree, to make sure that that not only did we have too big to fail, but we had too big to jail. So there's literally no punishment for the banks that, caused millions of foreclosures. This is the pattern. And it's each successive president is really moving the country further to the right, whether it's
Oh, yeah.
Democrat or Republican, towards Wall Street, because health care costs continue to increase, the cost of education, inequality, all of those indicators of how working people are doing just go up and up, regardless of the name, that the party of who's in power.
And then that becomes problematic too, because the people who think that this isn't just a horse race and that this isn't just political theater, they're thinking, oh, okay, well, 8 years of Obama, my life didn't get any better. So I guess progressive policies suck, because they think that's what they got under 8 years of Obama. And it's like, no, you didn't get that. You got 8 years of Mitt Romney under Obama. He did the same stuff. He did the exact same stuff. And like you said, sometimes when you have a Democrat, people go to sleep. So then these awful things that Republicans probably couldn't get away with happen. You mentioned a handful of the things under Clinton. The Telecommunications Act of 1996 also happened under Clinton. The worst media policy of both of our lifetimes happened under Bill Clinton. And then in 2016, people had the gall. Hillary supporters had the gall to complain about how the media was being unfair to her. And I would always say to those people, I was like, well, I guess it's a big bummer her husband made it a reality then. I wonder if she's mad at him for that. And then I would just I would stare at the blank look on their faces.
It's such a joke. They threw everything they had at Trump too. Yeah, you remember, and they still do. The media, billions of dollars of free advertisement trying to take him down. But people are so sick of these fake, institutions, including the media, that it's, it's part of the reason that Trump won, in my view, is that the media was so opposed to him. Is that people said, these people on TV do not reflect my interests. They are completely detached, and I just want to stick it to them and do whatever they're telling me not to.
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is, you talk about the handful of owners in this country. They own the media too. It's the same handful of Wall Street companies that own the media. They pump advertising dollars into the media to make it seem like it's sustainable, when really, like, they're just all the same owners. So all those special interests are just kept. And hey, Trump is good for ratings, and they know that. Trump's good for ratings. They like Trump. Trump's not a threat to the status quo. They know that. They like Trump. They don't have a problem with that. They're fine if Biden goes on to lose, a couple months from now, which he probably will. And, the cycle continues. And then meanwhile, they just, like, with a smile on their face, pump misinformation every day about what's actually going on.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that we can overpower it, though, because, you look at the growth of independent media, and what happened after 2016, you've talked about this, we know this, is that in 2016, Bernie started off that race with 3% name recognition, and no money, and there was an anointed establishment candidate, and the whole political, apparatus of the Democratic Party was against him. But he still did extremely well and would have won if it wasn't for cheating, even in 2015, as well as 2020. And so what happened, a big part of that was that he essentially popularized on social media. Social media was the platform where there was so much organic growth and collaboration, and people were starting, state offices and field operations, before the campaign even got to a state, and during the primary in 2016, all organized on social media. After the 2016 election, the establishment realized this is a threat to us. And that's where the fake news meme came out, and the fake news campaigns, where they decided we're going to use this as a vehicle because the internet is a threat now. It's too open. It's too decentralized. People are going around the gatekeepers of information, and they're figuring things out for themselves, communicating peer to peer, and independent media channels were exploding and organizations were exploding. And so they clamped down on that with the fake news, basically mantra. And we know what's happened since then. They've tried to manipulate algorithms. They've tried to suppress channels on social media and on YouTube. But despite their best efforts, honestly, they haven't been able to prevent channels like yours, channels like Jimmy's, channels like Rising, from blowing up. And so it shows that there is like this insatiable appetite, and there is a point at which like even their attempts at control cannot hold back how infuriated people are with this system and how ready they are to produce change, like systemic level.
So where does like a new party come into that? Like, how do you fit like a new party into this scenario? I mean, obviously there's a need for it. I'm not asking that question. I'm asking strategically, how do you fit that in?
Yeah. I mean, the new party is absolutely essential at this point. It's what the majority of Americans want. Like, this is something that has shocked me, honestly, since 2017, when we started MPP. And so after I worked on the Bernie campaign, I lobbied the superdelegates for him as the national political outreach coordinator. I worked on Our Revolution, helped him found that. And then afterwards, I said, this party is too corporate. And I saw statistics also showing that almost 2/3 of Americans, want a major new party. Like, that is insane. And I thought, why in the world is the progressive movement going against the populist trend in this country? The populist trend in this country, the momentum is out of the Democratic Party. You also see it in the numbers of independents. Like, the two parties have literally dissolved over the past few years. Millions of people have left and become independents. The number of independents is now around 42%, a large plurality, versus the number of people who self-identify as Democrats and Republicans, about 27% each, And even when you ask those 27% who are like still in the Democratic and Republican Party, and they're like, do you want to be there? Or would you rather be in a different party that like, exemplifies, your views basically, and that isn't corrupt? And half of the people who remain in those parties say that they would rather be there. So it boils down to about 13% of Americans who say that they're happy to be Democrats, and about 13% of Republicans who say they're happy to be Republicans. And everyone else is saying, get me out of this nightmare. I want a different party. And so that's the opening that we have. And I cannot understand for the life of me why progressives, in a moment like this, where working people are leading us out of the establishment parties and in an independent direction, why we are there trying to contain them and prop up establishment parties and save the Democrats. I say instead, let's go with the populist current and let's form a major new party, and let's do something radical and actually give people what it is they're saying that they want. They're not saying that they want different flavors of Democrat or different flavors of Republican. No, they're saying they want a major new party. And they're saying it fiercely, because the poll that there have been numerous polls, and it's a poll after poll after poll shows majority of Americans want a major new party. And it's particularly young people and particularly working people. It's like basically the harder your economic circumstances, the more you want it. Millennials, they want it by like 71% to like, 20. And so there's this enormous just momentum in that direction now. And it's time literally it's time to embrace that, because it's time to admit that there are no paths to victory left in the Democratic Party. AOC gave up on the corporate caucus. AOC, she's giving up on primarying candidates. Bernie was screwed for the second time. Only two progressives were actually defeated establishment incumbent Democrats in Congress in all of 2018. Only two out of 435 members of Congress. And so, like, we have got to come to terms with the fact that this strategy has failed.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and